Call this meeting of the Charter Review Commission to order. Richard Smith is not in attendance tonight. All other members are here. Hoping to start by going over minutes of the last two meetings. Did everybody have a chance to review?
Yes.
Okay. Any corrections, updates, edits? Okay. Then I will take a motion to approve the minutes of the last two meetings as sent out.
So moved. Second.
Any other discussion?
I can't vote on the first one because I was not there.
All right, we'll separate them out
Sorry.
into first one. First one is of May 2023.
So moved.
All right, second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, those are approved 3-0 with one abstention. To the minutes of our last meeting in November. All members here were there. I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any objections? No objections, it's unanimous, 4-0. All right, moving on to the language. Do a couple different things. The first one is the sheet we gave here. And this is just kind of the tracker that we've been using that includes basically everything that's been suggested and just kind of a rough notes about kind of what it's about. And so this will be updated this week and put online so people can also follow along at home. But I think one thing I want to do is just to go through and narrow down and kind of start to decide if any of this on here we want to just officially get off, push away, not do, continue, that sort of thing, if that makes sense. So I think the three options, what I'd like to do is basically continue discussion, recommend for future consideration, whether it's bylaw review or some other entity. And third would be to basically reject. Does that make sense?
What was the first one?
Continue?
Continue. Thank you. Rec for another body.
And then we can go through the language specifically of those we're going to keep afterwards. If that makes sense. All right. 1.3 form of government. This was consideration of changing the form of government to either mayoral or town council. The way we had left it was to make a recommendation to essentially take a sense of the town in a few years and not necessarily have to wait until the next charter review, but maybe take a pulse in about 5 years and see if there is a growing sentiment, or whether the 30% who kind of felt we should take a look at a mayor, just it's always there, but that's about all. So the way that this would be in a note as our part of our final report, basically to the Board of Selectmen to, in 5 years' time to either put together a committee or ignore or whatever.
What was the reasoning behind 5 years?
Well, because charter review happens every 10.
Okay, yeah.
And so bylaw happens every 5. So the idea was there's about 30% from the survey we got back was interested in mayor, which is not insignificant, but
Right, it's a small number who took the survey to then get 30% of that, yep.
So I think our feeling is that our final report would include a recommendation that in 5 years' time to take a sense of whether this should be picked up and looked at again.
Cool, okay. Thank
Right?
you.
All right, so this,
So is that a continue or is that a recommend?
that's a recommendation to,
Okay.
there will be a recommendation for a separate
Okay.
thing. Should we take an actual vote?
Do we want to vote each one, or do we want to vote at the end to approve our recommendations as discussed tonight?
Yeah.
I don't know, what's the,
We don't really have guidance on this part of it, so.
It's just more, do we want to go through each one and do it, or like you said, a chunk as discussed, and then someone will have to go through the
Yeah.
entire discussion to see what was voted on? Because we might say, no, we don't want to continue, is that part of the discussion, but it's not a vote, right?
right?
All right, so why don't we just make recommendations, and then we'll just approve, take one vote at the end.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we can always reopen if there's a, if
Yeah,
Rich comes
yeah,
back
yeah.
and makes a good case to take up something else.
And
we
plus,
can
you're
always-
going to update this, and it'll be a public,
Yeah.
yeah.
Conferring charter powers, this is just cleaning up some language. Continue with that. It's more grammatical editing than anything, but. Definition review, I could never found what the issue was here. I don't know, if, Will, if you found anything about this section?
No. We were going to look into if there was if we needed to more fully define qualified administrative officer, or if we wanted to replace it with town administrator or town manager.
Okay.
And I think we thought that the more general language gave more flexibility.
Okay.
So I think just
So no action,
no
basically?
action.
Okay. So,
So that, should it be the third column be like reject, no action?
yeah,
Okay.
basically. Next one was switching from an open town meeting to a representative town meeting. We've gone back and forth on this one a little bit. I don't know if, a few months down the road, if we have any different feelings. I don't know if representative has any better successes than the open.
Does that mean
Is-
someone's voted per,
Yeah, it means we'd have to
Like per
establish,
precinct?
in the 5 precincts, establish basically 10 to 15 people who would be town meeting representatives.
and that would be voted at like the town election?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then those people would be only those people would then be able to go to vote
Town
at town
meeting.
meeting.
Would that be part of our recommendation for the form of government discussion in 5 years, possibly? Because there wasn't an overwhelming, if I remember
Yeah.
the survey correctly, there wasn't like an overwhelming, let's do this.
Yep.
It's interesting, I
The-
like it, because it's the same people that go. So same people that are gonna come to town meeting
Yeah.
now are gonna be the ones that are gonna step up to be representatives.
Right.
So right now, you get 150 people.
Right.
So
17,000.
out of 70, which is still a terrible number, but.
Right, and we've been getting, what, 175, 180? I don't even think we break 200 in the
No.
last couple of years.
No, and most towns don't. I mean, it's rare you get more than
Right.
a couple hundred over.
I could tell you just from my experience working in Milton, which is representative town meeting, so the benefits are people, like, you're not looking for a quorum, usually, that's pretty packed, right? And they are maybe slightly more engaged, but I don't know. But then the downside is, like, if you have one issue, like, every, 5 years, there's like that one issue, people will run on that one issue, wipe out people who've been in town meeting, come and just vote to like pass a school thing or a trash thing, and then
Never show up again.
never show up again. Yeah. So those are the highs and lows of,
Right, because it's like, is it a one-year term, is it a three-year term, knowing that each year it's significant stuff?
yeah, I think Milton's probably a 2-year term, maybe.
Yeah, I think
it's
other towns I've seen 3 years.
3
It just
years,
gets
Yeah.
confusing. And
It's interesting.
Anyway, I would say that could be part of the recommendation to review in 5, unless,
no one else have any strong feelings?
I think that's reasonable. I don't think it's something that could be done now, for sure.
Pete, anything?
Well, I really don't know much about the other. My only concern is you may have one or two precincts who send their full 10 people and others that send 2.
Yep.
That's my only concern. And again, that same kind of thing about the number of people who go to the regular town meeting, because it's the same people who go to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we will recommend that that's something that takes another look in a few years to see if there's any changing dealings about it. Annual training, this is generally just adding something for the town clerk to keep track of, which is any professional development trainings completed by board members. She already keeps track of ethics and open meeting training. I think she's required to, so this would just be an additional page in the book, basically.
My only question is, do they have the time? And what are the consequences if you don't?
My feeling is that if the town wants this as part of the charter, then it becomes a budget priority.
What happens if I don't do my ethics training?
Our language is going, ethics training is
State name.
different, I think. Isn't there some fine that you can,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah,
But I guess my question is, do they really track it?
probably not. 'Cause-
Do they have the time?
No, the idea was more, as, around election time or reappointment time, that this can be something that's taken into consideration. That if you have a member who isn't doing the open meeting training, isn't doing the ethics training, isn't doing any professional development, and you have another person who wants to do all that, then that's part of the considerations. If it's just if it's another hurdle and not really going to accomplish anything, then we don't have to. But,
Well, if we say to continue, that doesn't mean we're recommending it, it just means we're continuing to talk about it?
yeah, yeah,
That's fine.
okay.
I would continue talking about it at least, I
Right.
guess.
Have we asked the town clerk in her office either how they track it, or if they would be open to maintaining that, or if they have a system in place already, or we asked them to completely
So I think the conversation we had was, that's when she mentioned that they already keep track of
Okay.
ethics and open meeting.
Yep.
And I can't say that they're excited and thrilled and clamoring for this, but, basically, if they're required to, they will.
Okay.
All right, continue. Moderator, absence, disability. I think we'll continue this one as
Yep.
well. Just clarification of the language. Public involvement during meetings. I did update the language a bit. We can talk about that shortly. Again, this is just requiring committees to state how the public can be involved in meetings,
Yep.
in their meetings. And we can get into the specific language afterwards, but we'll just continue talking about that. Sound okay?
Yep.
Oh, we never did take up this one. Sewer Commission. We still want to have a Board of Sewer Commissioners. Haven't really heard anything either way.
The only thing I ever heard of is when they created DPW, some people indicated there wasn't really a need for it, but
Yeah, my understanding is what they do is they go approve the sewer rates, they approve the drain layers licenses. And then if there's a project need, they'll advise on that. But those are all tasks that also can fall back to the Board of Selectmen.
Right, because it's a rate that affects the entire town.
Yep.
Who handles like the electrical and gas and all the other rates?
National Grid.
Sure, yeah.
So, did we ever invite John Stone in? Or did he ever come in?
remember?
He didn't come in, I
All
don't
right,
remember.
so I'll reach out, see if we can get to our meeting in 2 weeks and
Yeah,
take that up again. I don't know how I've missed this one in the past.
so that's the sewer commissions continue.
Selectmen versus Select Board, this is basically updating all references of Selectmen to Select Board. We'll
Yeah.
continue talking about that. Library Director appointment, we had talked about this in our last meeting, we found the old language. Basically, it was Language regarding how the library director is appointed, whether or not the board of trustees has direct appointment power, whether it's within consultation with the town manager, et cetera. If, I have language updated, continue talking about that if that sounds good. All right. Planning board terms, I think we kind of gone back as to whether they should be a 5-year term, 3-year term. This is something state law allows us to consider. But I think we kind of never really got a strong sense that it's a problem that needs to be fixed.
I don't think so.
So no.
It is odd that it's one of the only boards that's, it's a 5-year term versus a 3-year term. I think it's the only one, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the way it was set up in state statute
Yeah.
70 years ago. So, I'm coming up on my 10th year, which is crazy.
Jeez. Yeah,
And I'm the next to new guy.
right.
All right, so if it's okay, I'd like to take no action on this.
Yep.
Any other?
No action.
All right. Committee appointment process, this is language to kind of tweak the committee appointment process. We talked about it at our last meeting. I have updated language,
Sweet.
so we'll continue talking about that. Committee vacancy appointment, that's related to the previous one, because there's both elected, there'd be a method for elected and method for appointed.
Yes.
Town manager qualifications, we talked about this in our last one, we'll continue discussing that. Town manager activities, this was basically language saying that they cannot engage in any other outside offices activities unless they have permission from the Board of Selectmen. So that means, for instance, you know, the current town manager wanted to be on the finance committee in Whitman, you know, he would need approval from the Board of Selectmen. Yeah, so I don't know if there was any need for that or to review that one, or people are happy with the way that it currently works.
We didn't hear from anybody
Yeah.
that they wanted anything
All
about
right,
it.
so I'm going to recommend no action at this point.
Okay.
I don't think they have time to do anything like
Yeah.
that.
Was Milton a town that had the town manager or town administrator also was on another board in their hometown or something?
Not recently.
Okay.
Yeah, because the last
Does-
two
Warren.
lived in Milton, and then the
Hmm?
new
Warren
guys.
had something.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like school committee, or a school committee member is also a town administrator somewhere else or something.
Yeah.
Like they were elected to this, but then also, yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere on the Cape or like just into the Cape.
Yeah, once upon a time in Milton, the town clerk was also on the select board, maybe?
Oh, that's
Ooh.
interesting.
Yeah, it was. I won't say anything.
Library personnel, this is also was a recommendation from the chairman of the Library Board of Trustees, just about updating some of the language. We have the language to review, continue talking about this. Again, we're not endorsing it, but at least talk about it.
Right.
There've been some suggestions about amending the strong town manager language and making it more of a weaker town manager. We haven't really seen any specific suggestions. I haven't heard of any ways to accomplish that, so I don't know if it's needed. So if it's okay, I'd suggest no action at this time.
Okay, that's 4.3B.
4.2.
2.
4.2, sorry, yes.
Yep.
4.3B would add language just saying the town manager is in charge of enforcing the town charter, because right now,
No one is.
nobody is. And we don't really say how they would enforce it, but at least get something. Any, okay to continue discussions with that?
Yes.
All right, police chief, civil service, had been a recommendation making the police chief part of the civil service system, but the police department is moving away from the civil service system, so this is a moot point. So I'm going to recommend no action.
Okay.
Police chief contract. This is to make the police chief language similar to the fire chief. Right now, the police chief is open-ended in terms of the length of term. So we have some language here to discuss, so continue discussing. Budget presentation, we talked about this last week, continue discussing that. Time computations, we kind of went back and forth on this, and I don't know if we're just getting into the weeds a little too deep here.
Yeah.
Community time under charters.
It's like defining what equals a 5-day week and what doesn't.
Yeah, it's like if you say something is due in 7 days, it's just working days. If you say something's 15 days, then it's includes the weekends. It's a weird thing. I don't know if this basically is a connecting fabric to the universe, and if you unwrangle this, then
I like
everything
I
goes-
like the aligning. It's much more clear.
All right.
That first one, I had to read 3 times over, and I've gone through this before, and that was still confusing to read again.
All right, so we'll continue discussing
We
it
can
then.
continue that. I think that, just make it simple.
Okay.
Yep,
Someone who's not familiar with legally should be able to look at this to understand if they have a concern.
yep. 7.6 had to do also with gender terms throughout the charter. I think the changing the select board is the biggest one that's still there, so
Yep.
no action on this one.
Oh, wait. Continue or no action?
No action on 7.6, as we already referred to it earlier.
Okay.
I think it was just kind of a duplicate entry.
Yep, okay.
Bylaw Review Committee terms, just clarifying that their review process should start as soon as the charter review finishes its process as well. There was just some confusing language in there about when exactly the bylaw review would start its work. Oh, because if it's every 5 years, then it would actually overlap with our work at one point too.
Yeah.
Right, or you could say this is passed, and if their last one was just last year, they don't have to touch their stuff until 4 years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, continue that one. We don't have language on that yet, but it's easy enough. 7.9, kind of discussing part of a larger rewrite with resident outreach. Continue talking about that, okay?
Yes.
All right. Same with 7.9 OML as minimum standard.
Did
Again,
we-
can- Yeah,
Do we decide we needed that, or is that like, it already is a minimum standard? Were we gonna set up other minimum standard? I couldn't remember now. I
Yeah.
thought there was one part, like, we have to do open meeting law, so do we even need to put it in the charter?
well, it's more that open meeting law says, for instance, public participation is not required.
Okay, all right, yep,
It's like, yeah, that's the minimum, that's the floor.
Okay.
We're going to say we have to go above and beyond that.
all right, good, okay.
We want to strive for public participation.
Yes. Things like that.
Okay,
So we continue talking. Board minutes and access, this is updating the language about how board minutes are kept and approved and whatnot. Continue talking about that. Board member onboarding. So I gotta find the language where this lives. The idea was, right now, if you're appointed to a board, you're not necessarily presented with anything.
No, you're not. As someone who was surprised by that.
So that there should be some sort of at least minimum standard onboarding package, whether here's a copy of the state ethics rules, here's a copy of the town charter, here's a copy of the bylaws, here's a copy of your applicable committee bylaws and rules. So that you're not at least walking into it completely blind.
The last 3 meeting minutes or something,
Yeah.
I really like that. Would that go maybe under like committee appointments?
Yes, basically. All right, so we'll continue talking about that. Ability to restructure committees during middle of the year. This is a weird one, and it raises a larger question too. So there's one reading of the law that says that the charter does not prohibit committees from reorganizing in the middle of the year. And there's another reading that says because it's not specifically allowed, you can't do it. And it all just depends which lawyer you talk to on which day and from which committee, because committees in town certainly have reorganized the middle of a year, and there are other committees who have not been able, said they can't because our lawyer said we can't. So we do want to clarify,
Yep.
but I believe the suggestion given to us was that this is more a bylaw issue and not a charter issue,
Okay.
unless you feel strongly one way or the other.
So we would put that under recommend to another committee, or,
This would be recommend for future action.
okay. Oops.
Okay, transparency, check and balances of members. We never got any sort of specific suggestion, so I'm going to ask no action to be taken on that one.
Hold on a second, I'm just trying to
Yep.
keep track. Oh, the transparency, yep.
There was a suggestion that public presentations should be given more consideration to be for accessibility, so that, you know, the default is that there should be a visual presentation along with an oral one or handouts and made available online and et cetera, et cetera. Again, I don't know if that's better under kind of rules and regulations and guidelines versus town charter or what. We can certainly continue discussing for another couple of weeks and kick around some language.
Okay.
If that's,
Yeah,
okay. Hey, Amanda, you want to look at that one?
sure. Because I think that would be interesting to maybe part of the whole, the board minute approval and meeting, minute access, also the
Yeah.
public presentation accessibility. How does that all work? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I could look at some language for that. Because I have so much time.
Ban on town employees running for office. The language suggestion is that it's not that you can't ban people from running for office, it's that you can ban employees from holding office. So that you can run, but then you
Right.
can also be
Right.
employed.
I genuinely thought that that was already there, so that would be great to have that.
So I have language for that in this packet, so we'll continue talking about that. Suggestion was how to improve town meeting, never got, was going to say that, just no action on that entry. Town appoints emergency management director, we never really picked up this one. Is there current language in the charter with that, or is that a town, is that a bylaw issue? Anyone, do we ever look into it?
I feel like we asked somebody this, did we have fire chief? Did we have police chief? Did we have a chief come in at one point?
But the police chief definitely came in at one
I
point.
feel like we might have.
The town manager right now can appoint, it's the police chief is the emergency medical.
Yes,
I've had some people mention, it, and then Lindsay Wright is deputy
yeah.
emergency medical. Sorry, I know that, but,
So I think the suggestion was it might be time, or there's nothing in there that allows the fire chief to ever serve as the
Right.
emergency management.
Right, so just,
Basically, just give it to the town manager to
yeah.
decide.
based on the emergency.
Okay.
All right, so we'll continue talking about that. Get language. Filling board vacancies, we're going to take no action because it's being dealt with elsewhere. Stipend for the board of selectmen, okay. I don't get the sense there's any appetite here. The question is, we can say, you can recommend this as a bylaw? This is what legal suggested, was that it should be more a bylaw?
I think so, because I feel like a bylaw is easier to change if
Yep.
something comes up.
Or the charter says, may receive a stipend as established by bylaw or by town meeting vote.
Ooh, I like that.
But it means we're at least kind of
We're now
opening
saying
that.
they're
We're now
allowed to
opening the
say
door a
that.
little bit.
Okay.
Right now, it's no, but when we're saying it's allowed, but it's town meeting that sets it, kind of opening the door a little bit.
And it's also really hard to remove it if it's in the charter.
Yeah, so that's why I'm thinking, just let it, kick it to the bylaw.
Yeah, leave it alone. Okay, I like that.
They used to get paid.
Yep. used to get health insurance.
Yeah, I was gonna say they used to get health insurance. Some towns they still do, I
That
think.
was the big fig.
Yeah.
Committee alternates and associates. Yeah, this is the one we need to definitely have a conversation on.
Yeah.
If we wanted to expand the zoning board, because right now it's 3 voting members. And in order to pass something, I think you need a unanimous vote to approve like a variance. It can't be a 2-to-1 vote, it has to be
Right.
a 3-0 vote. So you're hearing a little bit of whispers about, it's done on purpose to help make sure that a lot less things get approved. Do we want to expand it to 5 voting members? Because planning board's 5 voting members, conservation I think is 5 voting members, maybe 7 voting members for conservation. Board of Health is 5 voting members.
Yep.
School committee's
CPA
5 voting members,
CPA
selectmen's
is
5 voting
9.
members, yeah.
I've
Yeah.
forgotten, why do some of the boards have associate members to begin with? Why are they there then?
So the associate members step in because like with zoning, you have to be there for all the meetings, all the hearings on a certain issue. If you miss one, you can't vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the associate member is there in case a zoning board member has to step away. The
But
zo-
they've been there all the meetings.
The alternate can then vote on that issue. And some of it's also, you start to learn about it and get up to speed, and then you step into the voting position down the road.
Right.
But with zoning, it's because the attendance is an issue. It's like with juror, it's like if a juror has to leave the juror panel, one of the alternates steps in and becomes the 12th juror.
I mean, if you make it 5 and the minimum vote is 3, it's literally exactly what the votes we already have now.
Yeah, so we need to have a hard
More
conversation about
coverage.
that quickly, if we're going to look at that. Term limits, we talked about term limits a little bit. I don't know if everybody has strong feelings about term limits.
I like term limits. Would that be for appointed and elected or just elected?
This would be specifically Board of Selectmen.
Oh, okay.
But I think the voters are the term limits.
Yeah, that's why I've always,
Put it, yeah.
all right, so no action?
Mhm.
All right, no action. Residency requirement. This is really targeted at one person, but does raise a question. Should we allow non-residents or non-full-time residents to be on town committees and boards?
Why aren't they a member in their town board? Or
Because they might spend a lot of time here, half the year here and half the town registered to vote somewhere else. But, they're still involved in this community.
There's ways to be involved without being appointed or elected,
Mhm.
is how I look at it. There's plenty of ways to be involved and make a difference without being in a position like this. So if you cannot vote in this town, I don't think you should be part of the town government.
agree.
Okay.
That's a solid,
We will continue discussing this one.
yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. I did not even know that was, again, like the other one, did not know that was an option otherwise.
Board of Selectmen approval so this was a suggestion from the Board of Selectmen to give the Board of Selectmen some more final approval on the hiring of department heads. However, they already kind of do, because they can essentially veto department head approvals within 30 days. So I kind of consider this a non-issue.
Yep.
Also, a couple board members wanted final approval for police and fire appointees. Again, we have a strong town manager and a strong chief system for a reason.
Right.
I haven't seen a good argument otherwise.
I agree.
Agree.
This was my idea to kind of rejigger open space and parks and rec. Because it's kind of not clear who's in charge of what. For instance, like Island Grove. Technically it's a park, but it's also open space.
It
And both
also
are-
is this weird, yeah, and then you get like the schools oversee part of the stuff, but so does Park and Rec. but the only way for Parks and Rec to have a different space is that open space is the one that's supposed to recommend the acquirement of it.
Yep. So I think the idea in my head was to split up the town's public recreation and open spaces into basically enterprise spaces and passive, active and passive. So for instance, and here's why. Basically, put one committee in charge of Strawberry Valley Golf Course, Island Grove Pool, and renting out town fields. And then the open space committee is in charge of maintaining kind of passive conservation walking areas.
So I'm just looking at, in terms of funding,
Yep,
let's say, for example, CPA funds, we have buckets for open space and recreation.
yep.
So open space can't have a trail in it, depending on what, or, sorry, it can, but I don't know if I like the passive, I don't know, I feel like that makes it more confusing.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
So it basically came down to, this shouldn't be handled at our level.
Yeah,
But obviously.
Agreed, both need to talk.
There needs to be a better clarification in the rules, I think, of
and Parks and Rec needs a big
what
budget.
everyone, well, that's, yes, undoubtedly.
That's another table for discussion, yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah, that
what
seems,
I'd- What I'd like to do is recommend that, essentially make a recommendation that there needs to be clarification of rules and responsibilities for open space and Parks and Rec, and if we're really serious about having these groups, like.
yeah, now that open space, we have the plan, they're only a couple years in, like, yeah, we need to
Yeah.
figure out where they fit. I like that, just not here.
Yeah, it's like open space is running the open space master plan, but really open space master plan has a big recreation component, and recreation hasn't been involved in that discussion, and so it's like
Oh,
there's.
interesting. Because
so
that master
there's-
plan just allows us to apply for like a
Yeah.
ton of grants that are just sitting there that no one applies to,
Yes.
so.
It needs to be done, but it's more just kind of like figuring, ever since we switched to the DPW system, we never really figured out how recreation fits into everything. So for instance, they still have responsibilities with like Island Grove, but they don't have a budget. So it's like, they used to have a budget, used to have a whole department with its own budget and own director, but they don't really have that anymore, but there's, the committee's still there, and so, but, you know, changes are made to the town's parks without ever actually asking Recreation, Parks and Rec what should happen to them, because they're appointed and, you know, really, John Stone is the head of all the town's parks, it's more of advisory. It's just, none of these things were ever figured out when we
Yeah.
switched over to the DPW. So, recommendation is that probably should figure out the new alignment of everything. And then the very last one was just who enforces town charter violations. And the word back from town council was, well, no one really, but we should at least
Try to address it.
try to address it, so we'll continue talking about that. All right, so that's helpful, that whittles it down. This bigger one, we can fly through a lot of this, because we talked about it at our last meeting, a lot of it. Form of government, we've discussed that. Strong Town Manager Week, we will discuss that.
Was this in addition to the last sheet?
Yeah, so this is the language as referenced on this master tracking document.
So just in terms of making a motion at some point, should we make a motion for having categorized things
You're right.
before we do this?
You're absolutely right. All right, so what I'd like to do is, I'd like someone to make a motion to adopt these recommendations for continued pursual of these topics moving forward.
So moved.
Very
Second?
second. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. All right, so this is all language referred to through this, the main tracking document. There's nothing in these papers here that isn't referenced here, to make that clear. And again, this will all be uploaded to the website, or the webpage, so people can follow along at home. OML as minimum standard, can we jump to that page? So highlighted section 1 and 2. Basically, it took out language regarding the new state Supreme Court ruling on censorship, essentially, that you can't set rules on speech. You can set like a time limit, but you can't tell people to behave. So 1 has been updated to reflect that. 2 is updated just to, again, dictate how make it clear how people can submit either testimony, reports, facts, whatever, before, during, or after meetings. Again, the idea is to encourage engagement. And we also had concerns about the 4th part. So updated this. Oh, just to say, on the next page, it says lack of suitable meeting space. Again, the idea was to encourage boards to have their meetings recorded electronically in some way. There are committees that meet not in town hall because that's where their staff works, that's where their activities take place. I don't think that necessarily is wrong, but right now their meetings aren't recorded in any way. And I think that's really not helpful.
Right.
And they're pretty important committees too. So,
But I know some towns are adopting charter and bylaw revisions that don't necessarily specifically speak to their local access.
Yeah.
But the fact that now you can record a meeting using Zoom, it might not be high quality, but at least you're going to get an audio recording of it. So I don't know how specific or versus how broad we want to be in our language, because, for instance, the library trustees meet in the library. They don't have they don't have a Abington access set up, but could they fairly easily do it with a Zoom or an OWL type setup? Probably. So I don't know. I like this idea. I just don't know. I don't want to limit it. I want to make sure we have enough wiggle room so people can do it.
so you can just change it to work with the town manager to ensure all meetings are electronically recorded.
Right.
Or work with appropriate.
Yeah. Or Or you keep having community, or other entity or well, I guess, yeah. If you're doing it through Zoom or something like that, you'd be working with the town manager to do that, maybe.
Yeah. Frankly, if the committee doesn't want its meetings filmed, fine, but
Right.
just vote that. Just say it,
Right.
we don't want them filmed.
Right.
All right, so, yeah, so the whole point of this edition is to encourage committee, not really encourage, but basically to tell committees they need to think about public engagement and how they conduct their meetings. That's the point of this article. That it's, in our view as citizens of this town, it's not okay to not consider public engagement.
Right.
Or to see open meeting law as, the maximum standard that you can do, when really it's a minimum.
No, I like this, where we can't do this for this reason, and then at any point, and then you have as well, the supermajority of the board may vote to amend this policy during any regular scheduled meeting. If during a meeting that's being recorded, you realize we need to, basically go into, executive session sort of situation.
Yeah.
You have to vote why,
Of course, yeah.
So I think it's reasonable, the transparency is, you need to make more and more of it, and if it's out there, and someone sees that, like, oh, we should do that, you know?
And as much as anything, I think number 3 is really the key one here. As a planning board member, I can tell you it bothers me when it says, well, we only have to send notices out to the abutters. And that bothers me because you might have a neighbor that is 100 yards away from a proposal, but because it's not a direct abutter, it doesn't get a notice.
The
But it's
dance lights
still,
don't go into my neighbor's yard, they go into mine across the
Yes.
street.
Right.
it's still going to be impacted.
And I had to go to that meeting because someone told me about it, but I was not in a butter. Yes, I don't like that.
So it bothers me that, even if state law says that abutters have to be notified by first-class mail or whatever the regulation is, that shouldn't be the end of the effort. That the effort should also be then, we have their email addresses. We know who these people live. Just send them out a letter. Doesn't have to be certified, doesn't have to be first class, doesn't have to be carrier pigeon. But I mean, at least send out a letter to, people within a certain radius saying, we're gonna have a meeting, why don't you come have a conversation? And yeah, it's gonna take a little extra effort, but if this is really one of our values or interests, then we fit it in.
Does the agenda show that you're going to be doing that particular area?
Yeah. So,
Couldn't you make sure the agenda's online with meeting in the calendar?
and that's certainly part of it too. Yeah.
Because I see some committees, you don't even know they exist.
Also, if you make it more open for these smaller committees and people go to this small meeting, there's only 3 people in the audience and they engage, they'll probably come to the town meeting because it was an easy way to interact
And that's just
without
it,
it being
yep.
overwhelming and I don't even know what to do and what's going on and how do I vote and.
Yeah. So, I mean, just for background in terms of some of this, when I first got on the planning board, again, this is 10 years ago, you would hear a lot of the times people discussions online, I had no idea this is being discussed. And so I started posting the planning board agenda on Facebook. And people were just like, oh, this makes sense. Why don't we all do this?
Right.
Just because it's so easy. Just here's the agenda, put it on there. You at least get some eyeballs on it. And it's why when the Abington News stuff, I do the week ahead. I do the meeting schedule.
Honestly, that's how I know when everything's getting discussed is Abington News.
Yeah.
Instead of going on the website, yeah.
I mean, it's just,
And not all the meetings are on the website.
Exactly, and it's
Right.
kind of confusing, the new website. It's not obvious where to go initially.
so
And I'm a millennial.
it's really not hard for someone on the committee to say, with all the different tools we have, just to say, hey, here's what's coming up. We have a meeting, come join us. And that should be part of our standard operating procedure. And I feel very strongly about this. That just this idea of, well, we don't have to do it. Just, it bothers me to no one. And then we wonder why we have trouble
Right.
getting, a
Yeah.
quorum at town meeting.
But then you get into the whole issue that minutes are supposed to be in the library and they're not.
Yep, you're right. There's all these little
Nobody's-
pieces.
Yeah.
All these little pieces fail, and guess what? The whole net eventually unravels because you're not having meeting minutes, you're not having the meetings recorded, you're not promoting them, you're not talking about them. When people do show up, they can't talk and participate. I mean, all of this stuff put together, it's like, oh, this is why people just don't show up and get involved. One reason. Anyway,
I guess I want to get back to number 4 where it says, Abington Community Access. Should we leave that in or take it out? Because again,
let's have a conversation, I guess, with the town manager and Kevin Tachi about the best way to,
Okay.
10 years from now, I don't know if it'll be Abington Community Access or it'll be some other entity, which is what I
Right.
put in, or a successor entity. Maybe everyone just operates through VR headsets, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I hope not.
basically, I think if the goal is to make sure that meetings are recorded electronically and distributed or
Right.
available for viewing.
We could just say that,
yeah.
yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
And then I also want to give committees the out saying, look, if you really don't want them recorded, okay, but you at least have to vote on it.
Right.
As well as, if there's a snowstorm and a branch falls down, you're not going to get penalized because, you can't broadcast it. I mean, stuff happens. Anyway, resident outreach, this is again part of updating operating procedures for committees. What we've realized over the past 2 years is that not every committee basically has a handbook or rules of procedure or whatever. Some do, a lot don't. So this would be part of their initial setup, and part of their annual approval process is go over parliamentary procedures, rules of conduct, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Great.
When you have contact information for the body's chairman?
Yes. So initially, we were going to do, we mentioned something about like emails, phone numbers, addresses, and it was basically, as long as there's some way of contacting people besides a blind email into, a website somewhere. This is when we were talking about like the establishing of the email for the committee.
Right.
So, conservation, abingtonconservation@gmail.com or whatever
Yeah.
at abington.gov. Having some basic way of contacting the board. All right. Absence of moderator, that's all set, no changes there. Charter powers, all set. Town employees seeking elected office. And again, I think we decided this should be bylaw versus,
No, we decided.
we say continued, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so this language isn't great, but it's a change. So again, it's not that you're banning someone for running from office, which is really not a great thing to do. It instead says you can run for office. You then just can't be employed by the town if there's a department that you oversee.
Right, you can be on the school committee, you just can't be a teacher.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm not sure about the language where, if,
Yeah, you could, like, you can't be on the Board of Health and be a tobacco retailer.
it's more,
Yeah, I guess not.
no,
Well,
you can have a private job. It's more
Yeah.
if you're a
oh,
DPW
and a
employee.
department directly
Yeah, yeah,
overseen
yeah.
by that
If you're a
board,
DPW
yeah.
employee, can you be in the Board of Selectmen? Technically, the town manager is, you respond to the town manager,
Oh, yeah.
but ultimately, the Board of Selectmen oversees the town manager. I mean, there's.
Right.
The Board of Selectmen can institute investigation into the DPW.
Right.
They control their budget.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't know if that's how it needed to be worded,
Well, we can get council to double,
Yeah.
yeah.
because technically, a town manager doesn't oversee the school department.
Right.
Board of Selectmen doesn't oversee the school department. They still, vote on the budget, but it's not that direct line of oversight. We have to figure out what the wording is, but.
Right, but you could be like, I don't know, on the Conservation Commission and work at the library, or, because those are.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
as long as they don't touch each other.
Right,
Yeah.
like right now, I'm actually full-time with the school department, but I'm on the Board of Health.
Yeah,
Board of Health does not
right.
oversee the school department.
Right. Yep.
It's just like so few,
Yeah.
but,
Like you'd be on the school committee and be an employee for the waterworks.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't be a waterworks employee and also on the waterworks board.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that works.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Right. So I'll go forward. Qualifications is all set. Modernization. I don't know who's going to do all the editing, but someone will.
So when sorry, I was asked about this, the existing text and the proposed text. Should all of our proposed texts, do they all
Yes.
include select board?
We would need to update all of our text as well. That's kind of the.
That's, okay, that's
Chicken
what I
and
was.
egg thing is,
We want this, but to have this, we also need to make sure everything else is also, like, we assume that this is going with
Yeah.
forward. Okay, just want to make sure that was
yeah.
clarified, 'cause I think we say board of, like, right here, there shall be a board of selectmen.
Yep.
It really should say there should be, there
select
shall be a
board.
select board, because that's what we're choosing to do.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
sorry, just
So-
wanted to confirm.
Select person term limits, we're going to,
No action.
no action on
action.
that. Select person stipends, no action on
Well,
that.
we're
Like
going to
we-
refer that to
Yeah, you're right.
bylaws or
Yep,
whatever.
yep, yep, yep. Police and fire chief appointments. So we talked about this last time. We'll need the town managers, not really to weigh in, but just to make sure we're not tripping into something we don't expect, but town council weigh in on that too. We talked about rules, minute meetings last time. So,
I still think it should be either the town library or the town website.
But I don't think you need to have both. It's kind of,
Because you can access town website at the town library.
yes.
or again, we'd say,
Shall be a public record kept
available to the public in a
digitally.
public manner, as described in the town bylaws or something.
Okay.
I like that.
Because it obviously has failed miserably in the library.
Budget process, changes really start, we talked about this one last time, haven't really changed it anyway. I need to send this off to the finance committee and board of selectmen
Crunch on.
to get there, because they're in the middle of it now, so they'll have a good point for it. Committee board appointment process, again, this is a pretty significant rewrite. But I think it's a much better, much clearer rewrite as well. Did you want to discuss this one again, or are we feeling pretty good where this one stands?
No, we talked quite a bit about
Yeah, I think
this
we're
at the
good.
last meeting.
Okay, and then library director appointment.
Do we, sorry. Oh, because committee board appointment includes a vacancy in town clerk or town moderator.
Yeah, so
Okay,
there's
sorry.
three
Yep.
distinct groups.
Vacancy on appointed yep, we did that, okay. Yep, playing catch up. We're good. Go forth.
Because technically, like, the town manager can't fire the town clerk.
Right. Or
Selected.
elected, sorry.
So, all right, library director appointment. The initial part of this was a dispute 10 years ago, I believe, maybe even 20 years ago, about who is officially responsible for the appointment of the library director. And the way it's currently worded is that the Board of Library Trustees shall appoint in consultation with the town manager, who is essentially the town's personnel director. It doesn't say what happens if there's a conflict or who wins out, but this is the current wording. The Library Board of Trustees wants sole power to appoint. I'm not aware of any other boards in town that hire the department head directly aside from the school committee, and that's set in state statute.
I like the shall recommend.
Because I think it dilutes the town managers.
It does.
Yeah.
And he's the manager of the police, fire, why shouldn't he be out of the library?
Yeah.
And I understand the role of the library trustees, but
I like the shall recommend, where it's clear
Yeah.
that they are the ones leading it.
Yes.
And they're making the recommendation of, we've gone through this process, we recommend this person is hired.
yeah.
And
I
the town
think
manager can
that's-
veto, essentially.
Right,
But,
but the one above sounds like he needs to be in every single interview,
yeah,
is how I would read that.
yeah.
That if he's not there, then we're not in compliance, so to speak. And the Board of Library Trustees are an elected position, so
Yeah.
I think that's totally reasonable.
So,
The library trustees will not.
no, they will not
Okay.
but I'll let the chairman know
Okay.
that this is what we feel is appropriate and see what the feedback is.
I disagree with it, so, but.
What would you like to,
I think it's fine the way it is.
okay,
I think this is the norm in the state for most municipalities, because libraries were set up through state statute back in 18 whatever, and it was always the trustees that appointed the library director. So that's the history of it. I get that it's different, like the police, fire, whatever, but that's That's kind of been the norm for a while.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I'd say the majority of municipalities still work with the library director.
So do you think the proposed text is more punitive?
I think the proposed text insinuates that the town manager has the final say, whereas
Okay.
the first, well, so as a charter review member, the first text is kind of vague,
Yes, intentionally.
yeah. And the second text is less vague,
Correct.
Okay.
right? But, I don't know.
So do you think it'd actually benefit the board to keep it the way it is?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I haven't talked to the town manager about it or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just one person. That's fine. It's 3-1.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
have.
If we ever vote on this.
This is your area of
Yeah,
expertise.
yeah. No, I mean,
Sounds
this
reasonable.
has always been my experience.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
except in cities, like cities when there's a mayor, the mayor usually.
Do you have any sense of what other towns are doing or how other towns handle this?
Yeah, most towns handle it that the library trustees select the library director.
Could you pull together language?
I'll try to, yeah.
If you are
Yeah,
not
yeah.
able to, then
Yeah,
pick 10 towns.
yep, yep. Let's add it to my list here, yep. And I'm gonna have to disappear in a minute, I have another meeting at 7:30.
Okay.
So,
We're almost,
so if we're not done, somebody might just need to take a couple minutes.
this is our last
Yep.
one. Library Director Personnel. This is again another suggestion from the Library Board of Trustees. Basically, the way it's currently worded, a literal reading is that library employees technically respond directly to the town manager, not the library director. And they feel that, similar to how it singles out that the school department employees respond to the school superintendent, that they want to make sure that the library director is in charge of the day-to-day operations of the library department employees, set schedules and approve vacations and stuff like that. They're concerned, again, if you take a very literal reading of it, that it would be the town manager who is in charge of the operations of the employees. So basically, it gives,
It just clarifies. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because it says employees for every other
yeah.
group, but not that one.
So like housing authority employees report to the housing authority director. School department employees respond to reply to the school superintendent.
Yep.
And what they're saying is that the library employees report to the library director.
Right. That's reasonable.
Is that your understanding, Bill?
That's my understanding of it too, yeah,
Yeah.
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 That
So
makes
why
sense
are
to me.
these three separate from the rest of the departments?
Housing authority, I'm sure housing authority and school is state statute.
Okay,
I have a feeling library is probably state statute as well, but at some point,
Yeah.
it was pulled out.
It was state statute, and then they just did a personnel study, like, when the group from UMass or BU came
Yeah.
in, and that was one of the recommendations they had was to change this language.
Yeah.
I'd have to dig that up, but I remember that's what they were telling us.
Yeah, like as you mentioned, that
Okay.
libraries are kind of has some special carve-outs too.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is just to give this one to the library director and town manager separately and make sure that, see if they're in agreement. And
okay. If they
or
are,
if
that's
they-
fine.
Or if this is a hornet's nest of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah, because,
Because I don't think the town manager is particularly keen on keeping
close eye on the library.
I don't think so either.
I think he has enough, or they have enough issues.
Right, because the
Yeah.
thought was, we're looking at the timeline, you're gonna share this, the next meeting in December was going to be, let's try to lock all this down so you can start sharing in January so we can get final wording ready for February, March.
Yes.
Okay.
So next meeting in 2 weeks, I think, we're
Yeah, it's
I
like,
have
About
the 13th.
13,
Yep.
so 3
Yep.
weeks. I'd like to have basically all final wording by then,
ready to go. Okay.
so that we can do a initial approval. And then that leads us into setting public hearings, public presentations, going forward, I assume, Board of Selectmen in January, and then legal review in January and February, and then voting in April.
Awesome.
Great.
All right?
Yep.
Thank you very much, everybody, for
Move to adjourn.
Second.
any discussion. I have lots of thoughts I'd like to discuss about this adjournment at this time. If we could- All right, all in favor?